Hey, yo, what up? Welcome back. There's not a podcast. It's just my thoughts with Rob Mark. But today we're going to talk about Sir Lucian Grainge, chairman of UMG. And we're going to talk about Drake, all right? He responds to Drake. Earlier this week, court documents related to the discovery portion of the Drake versus the UMG defamation suit, which centers around Kendrick Lamar's diss record, Not Like Us. Okay, documents from that discovery portion were made public online. The very simplified version of what's going on is that we're in the discovery phase, so the suit hasn't started yet. Both sides are collecting information from one another so they can build their cases. Drake, so he can build his attack is probably the wrong word. UMG, so they can build their defense. And basically the short of it, right, is that Drake's team wants UMG to hand over the most amount of information, emails, documents that they can get, anything that would aid their argument. UMG just doesn't want to hand every request over. And of course, there's laws here that dictate what UMG must hand over and what UMG could deny. For example, Drake's team wants an unredacted version of Kendrick Lamar's contract. It appears that UMG has given them a redacted version with parts blacked out and made visible are the parts that are relevant to the case or the parts that UMG and Drake's team agreed on. But Drake's team went back to the judge and said, well, no, we want the unredacted version, and the judge has to rule on that, right? Drake's team wants information about the paternity of Kendrick's kids. Whether the judge will rule in that favor, we'll see. Also, what information does UMG actually have about the paternity of his kids? I mean, we don't know. I think they're just fishing. They're just saying, hey, what can we find here? They want any information from UMG about the alleged domestic violence that Drake accused Kendrick of on Family Matters. Maybe they're just fishing. I don't know. Like what information does UMG have about that? We'll have to wait and see. And more importantly, we have to see what the judge decides and how relevant the judge thinks that is to discovery. Drake's team also wants documents from UMG Chairman Lucian Grainge himself. Now, UMG doesn't want to expose Lucian's communications, citing basically that if Drake's team already has related documents from guys like Interscope head John Janik and Republic head Monty Lippman, then they don't need Lucian, because those other guys and folks in that category, and John Janik is high up the food chain. Monty Lippman is high up the food chain. Like, if you have communications from those and others in the UMG organization, they actually run the business day to day, so that the information you obtain from them is more relevant from anything you'd get from Lucian. They're basically saying Lucian doesn't have anything to do with this. Now, Lucian Grainge himself responded to the request with a declaration document submitted to the court. The document hit courtlistener.com. It was brought to my attention by Twitter user @WanaForever. I'm no lawyer, okay? I believe this is all legit, though. It looks all legit. Basically, Lucian is saying he's not involved in the day-to-day release of any records, and certainly not of Not Like Us. He actually says he didn't hear Not Like Us until after it was released, same time we heard it, supporting UMG's claim that he does not need to be exposed or take part of the discovery because he wasn't part of the release of the marketing or the promotion of this record in an intimate way. He shoots down the notion that he tried to devalue Drake through the promotion of Not Like Us. He says, because I invested hundreds of millions of dollars to buy stake in Drake's catalog. And he claims that Drake is making a personal attack on him. And, this is more of a media play to put Lucian's name in the headlines and makes it a bigger story than what it is. It's a 2-page document. I'm going to read the entire thing. But first, please like, subscribe, comment, man. I need all of that support. I appreciate y'all showing up to this channel, man, every time that y'all do, all the love that y'all give me on social media. So please continue to support. But let's check it out. Let's read it, man. United States District Court, Southern District of New York. This is where this lawsuit is being tried. Aubrey Drake Graham, plaintiff versus UMG Recordings, defendant. Declaration of Sir Lucian Grainge, CBE, pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1746. I, Lucian Grainge, declare as follows. I'm the chairman and CEO of Universal Music Group NV, which is the indirect parent corporation of defendant UMG Recordings, Inc. Plaintiff Aubrey Drake Graham claims that I was behind the scheme to devalue in quotation marks, devalue his brand through the release and promotion of the Kendrick Lamar recording Not Like Us, an allegation that makes no sense due to the fact that the company that I run, Universal Music Group NV, has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Drake, including long-standing and critical financial support for his recording career, the purchase and ownership of the bulk of his recording catalog, and the purchase of his music publishing rights. So right at the bat, Sir Lucian Grainge is saying that, they invested hundreds of millions of dollars. We know about the $400 million re-up the last time, but for the purchase and ownership of the bulk of his recording catalog, it gives you maybe a little insight into the deal that UMG struck with Drake, but doesn't tell the whole story. I mean, what does bulk mean? What's the percentage that they own? Who gets what? At what point are those rights reverted over? I know there's a lot of speculation here, but I don't think there's a ton of information. But what Lucian is basically saying, hey, we invested hundreds of million dollars of here, and I'm not behind the scheme to devalue him. That's what he claims. He says, it also makes no sense whatsoever as I run a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation whose operation in over 60 countries covering nearly 200 markets ultimately report up to me. Our business encompasses over 100 record labels, as well as a multinational music publishing division, global merchandise and direct-to-consumer business, the worldwide Virgin Music label services, short and long-form audio-visual production, and a variety of other businesses, each with its own CEO/president and its own managing structure. Collectively, these businesses issue tens of thousands of releases and product each month. My focus is on developing and implementing the global strategy that will shape UMG for generations to come. In light of this responsibility, the proposition that I am in the weeds as to the release and promotion of any particular sound recording from the thousands of UMG releases throughout the world is farcical. I might have fucked that word up, but basically it's a farce, is what he's saying. That's where that word stems from. So, he's saying, hey, man, I run this whole company. There's tens of thousands of releases each month from UMG, and I'm not in the weeds from this, which is plausible, which is true. Now, the question is, does he pay attention to special release? Kendrick is truly cream of the crop, one of the top artists. Is he in the weeds on, when you have high investments like that? Kendrick is a high investment, Drake is a high investment. Do you pay closer attention to those artists as opposed to, and I'm not picking on somebody, but just as an example, shout out to Armani White, who signed to Def Jam, who was a much smaller, more developing artist, as opposed to Lucian Grainge, like being in the weeds on an Armani White release. You know what I'm saying? Or a Lady London release who was on Def Jam, but a newer artist probably doesn't get that level of attention. That's what a skeptic would say, right? Like, sure, you aren't in the weeds, but this is Kendrick, this is Drake. Of course you know. Lucian is saying no. Lucian is saying I'm just not involved. Each of these labels have their own CEO, their own reporting structure. It is their job to do it. I'm not involved. But he goes on and he specifically talks about Not Like Us. He says, given my role, I'm accustomed and unfortunately largely resigned to personal attacks, and I further recognize that a frequent strategy of UMG's litigation opponents is to attempt to waste mine and UMG's time and resources with discovery of the sort that Drake is seeking here, either in an attempt to gain media attention or in an effort to force some kind of commercial renegotiation or financial concession. So he's basically saying, given his role, he's high up the food chain, people know his name, that this is a waste of time to have him take part in discovery, and it's either to kind of fuel media headlines or to force UMG to come to the table for some type of settlement, a commercial renegotiation or financial concessions. He says, now this is what he says directly, but given Drake's motion, I would like to make it quite clear that I have never heard the recording Not Like Us, nor ever saw the corresponding cover art or music video until after they were released by Interscope Records. So he's saying that he saw it at the same time as you and me. You know what I'm saying? While as part of my role, I certainly have financial oversight of and responsibility for UMG's global business, the proposition that I was involved in, much less responsible for reviewing and approving the content of Not Like Us, its cover art or music video, or for determining or directing the promotion of those materials is groundless and indeed ridiculous. I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct, executed on August 14th, 2025 in Monterey, California, and it was signed by Sir Lucian Grainge. So, there you have it. I mean, not only is this a statement, I mean, this is on court and record and the part of I declare under penalty of perjury. So, what I'm assuming, if somebody wanted to go to the lengths and somehow try to prove that Lucian was lying or not truthful, not forthcoming, and was actually in the weeds, let's say, he says very clearly, I didn't hear "not like us" until after it came out. If somebody can prove that he heard it before it came out, then he subjects himself to perjury, right? The penalty of perjury. So, it's a strong enough statement that he's putting legally. I don't know if he was forced to do this, if he did this of his own volition, but he basically made this statement and said, hey, under the penalty of perjury, like, I declare all of this to be true, and I don't need to be a part of the discovery. I mean, I also don't think I don't know how much time and I had heard things, but again, Not Like Us was pretty. It happened pretty quick. You know what I'm saying? The way it was released. I don't know. Like, it wasn't like, an album that you turn in a month in advance and y'all come up with a marketing strategy for it. That's what happens with a lot of artists. Like, this stuff was coming out quick and fast and furious. So I don't know how much time there was for it to review or to go up the food chain, definitely to Lucian, but we'll see. He's saying no. He's saying unequivocally. He is very clear that he had no involvement in this, and now it's up to the judge. It'll be interesting to see how the judge responds. Does the judge go back to Drake's team and say, hey, Lucian is not a part of this, and his documents don't need to show up. It's called a documental custodian in discovery. He doesn't need to be a part of it. Or does he rule against UMG and say, nah, like, it's fair game, show the stuff? It depends on how the judge rules. We'll see. But Lucian is very clear here. He was very clear. These were strong words, saying, again, that he didn't hear the record, that an attempt, to suggest that he would devalue Drake after they invested hundreds of $millions is false. This is his POV, and that this is an attempt to force some type of renegotiation or garner media headlines, which this video is evidence of. Just so I'm clear, because people feel away when I do these videos. Maybe because I don't yell, I don't shake my fist, I don't call anybody any names. But I've stated very clearly many times I'm not a fan of this suit. I think, while I feel like for Drake for being called a pedophile on record and the public embarrassment of losing a battle in this way, that's gotta suck. It's gotta suck. It can't feel good. It can't feel good. But this is hip hop. And these are battle records, and he willingly jumped into this and willingly also provoked this in many ways. You were a willing participant of this, and it just didn't turn out in your favor. So the lawsuit of it, part of it, it seems just very disingenuous to me. I get taking on a big major label like UMG. I'm all for artist rights. Absolutely all for artist rights, but not like this. Not off the back of a battle which you lost, which you also egged Kendrick on, and putting lyrics under the microscope in this way and artistic expression. I think it has the ability to change how battles are done forward in hip hop, if at all. Would labels even want to take part in it after this? Does this change how the whole game goes. And it's okay if the game evolves. Hip hop is constantly evolving, but not off of this suit. Not like forcing a change just because you lost the battle. That doesn't feel right, and I'm clear on that, and I've always been clear on that. But I just don't call out. I'm not gonna call them a name. I'm not. At the end of the day, you're not gonna get me for defamation, and I just don't feel that way. I can tell people, I don't like your action. I didn't like the action, and not make it a personal attack. So that's just me. That's just my style, man. So hopefully y'all respect it. If not, I can only be me. You know what I'm saying? But appreciate y'all for watching, man. Appreciate y'all for locking in. Like, subscribe, comment, do all that. I got a ton of work to do. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. So you're going to see more of me today. I promise. All right? Peace.